Hello and welcome to The Blueprint, Canada's Conservative podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Schmale, Member of Parliament for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock in Ontario. We have an amazing show for you today. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got lots to talk about, but first, before we get to it, just remember, please, we need your help to encourage the Conservative movement and getting our message out. So you need to like, you need to comment, you need to share and subscribe to this podcast so that we can continue to spread this message of Conservative values such as freedom, liberty, and democracy. So, in our second guest coming up in the second part of the show, stick around for that. That's Todd Doherty. He's our transport critic. He's going to talk about what's going on across Canada in terms of the blockades that are holding up parts of the Canadian economy. But first, I don't want to downplay him. We have Luc Berthold, the infrastructure critic for the official opposition. He's the member of parliament for Mégantic-L'Arabe in Quebec. He's an amazing individual. We're going to talk about how the Liberals continue to talk about infrastructure. You'll remember in the 2015 election, that's all we heard. We need to run small, tiny deficits for 3 years to invest in infrastructure. Well, we all know that didn't happen, and we are wondering, where is this money? So, Luc, thank you very much for joining us. Where is the infrastructure money?
That's a good question. That's why we are asking the Auditor General to check about all this infrastructure investing in Canada plan that the Liberals put forward. You know that the Parliamentary Budget Officer checked on that plan, I think 3 times. And each and every time he missed some information. He found that for the first 2 years, almost half of the money wasn't spent on the ground. So he just asked the Liberals a lot of questions about where's the money and what's your plan? And one answer was, we don't have a plan. Really? I mean, that was the answer when the PBO requests some information about the planning for this plan for the few years, because it's a 10 years plan. And the answer we received from Infrastructure Canada was there's no plan.
So they earmarked billions of dollars, but yet had absolutely no plan to distribute this money. So what does that do for provinces? What does that do for municipalities who are relying on this money to build community centers, roads, bridges?
That's the main problem. Because we have to go back to 2015 like you just did. Remember when the Premier, Justin Trudeau, just said, we will run a teeny small deficit just for a few years. And we will invest all that money on infrastructure to create jobs, to help middle class, and to help those who want to join it. That was his word. And 2 years after, in 2017, we just realized that not half of the money was spent on the ground. So where was the money? We don't have the answer, because the Liberals have just said, like they are really good at it, just said a lot of words, but they weren't able to deliver on the ground, deliver to the provinces, deliver to the municipalities. And that's kind of sound an alarm for the PBO. Any check. In 2017, like I said, only half of the promised infrastructure's money was sent in the ground. I'm not telling you that it was spent and that was used, was sent in the ground. So where's the job? Where was the job? We don't know. Well, I want to answer this question, but we don't know. In 2018, just let me tell you that, when the Parliamentary Budget Officer requested the Trudeau Liberal Infrastructure Plan, they found that it does not exist, like I said. And in 2019, when the Parliamentary Budget Officer requested a list of all specific project commitment under the Investing in Canada plan, the Liberal government was unable to provide the data. We are talking about $186.7 billion from Canadian money. Canadian works hard to earn that money, and they can't even provide where the money is spent. So that was, for us, a big concern. That's why we have asked the Auditor General to make an audit on that.
Well, Luc, you know this because you're dealing with this every day. This is your file. But for Canadians watching and listening in, this has been the Liberal speaking points
Exactly.
for years now. They comment on this big number and they march that around as if it's the trophy, but yet they have no mechanism to get this money out
Exactly.
into our provinces and into our communities where people who, as you said, get up every single day and work hard to pay their taxes, but also, more importantly, provide for their families and their individual needs, they are not seeing the fruits of their labor in terms of better roads, better bridges, better community centers.
Just between us.
It's only between you and I.
Just between
No.
us. When you're going back to your writing, just look around you. And you're supposed to see the money because this is a huge amount of money. You're supposed to see bridge build, roads, transportation system improved. And have you seen something like that since 2015?
Not as much as what was promised.
No, that's the real problem. So, and the Liberals are good at saying something and making it harder to trace. And that's why we ask. We put a motion. We have won a vote, an important vote in the House of Commons with the support of the Bloc Québécois and the NDP and the independent members of Parliament to force the government to open their book to the Auditor General. And we received a good news last week. The Auditor General will make an audit on this huge infrastructure plan. You know, it's easy to say, oh, we can't find the money. Why? Because there's 30 agencies who are responsible for the spending under 50 different programs. How can you trace it if you don't have any plan? So this is, I think, a real fiasco for the Liberals. Their promises just were just empty, and now they will face the reality when the Auditor General will deliver his result in 1 year. Because in the motion that we put forward, we gave him a year to audit the government on that.
Well, even if you are spending, you know, they tout this big, huge number.
Yeah.
But if you're getting no results, you're not actually making anyone's lives better. But as we've seen with the superclusters, which was supposed to be this grand announcement, 5 big superclusters, we're not even sure what it means, but they're going to develop technology and drive the economy in these superclusters. The money in that file hasn't even been spent, and that was announced years ago.
Exact. So, where is the money? Because the Liberals are running big and bigger deficit year after year. And that was supposed to go to the infrastructure, to go to the super cluster. And in reality, we've seen nothing on the ground. So where is the money in the system? They literally put money everywhere. The Justin Trudeau best answer is, for a problem is, I will give you some money. I will give you some money. Remember Omar Kader, I will give you some money. Each and every time he answered with money, so no money left for infrastructure, no money left for the supposed big news at super cluster. So we really have a lot of concern about their way of managing this country. And that's why we will use all the help that we have, that we can, to put a light on this mismanagement.
Well, I think it's you talked about it earlier. When the Conservatives were in power and the economic downturn was happening, the plan was in place. We were able to get out large amounts of money, targeted and temporary, that improved infrastructure in every corner of this country.
You know that we were the best of the G7 country to went out this crisis because the money was well invested. We made a difference for the economy and for the infrastructure in Canada. Now they want to borrow money. There is no crisis and there is no result. So I don't know how to deal with all this thing that they are supposed to do, but they are not delivering on it. So, you know, the problem we have now is that the Auditor General said last year that he does not have the money to do all the audit requested because this big government spending. So now we are asking the government to provide him with enough money to do his job, to watch him, and to audit all in every program about this Investing in Canada plan, because I think we will find a lot of a bad thing. I can't say good thing, because for an opposition view, a bad thing for the government is a good thing for us. But a bad thing for the government is a bad thing for Canadians, and unfortunately, I think they will find a lot.
Well, what are we, $27 billion in the hole this fiscal year?
Yeah.
I think for Canadians, I think this is something we really need to take a look at. And I think the media has overlooked this as well, because it makes the Liberals look bad, which is a shame, because this is hard-earned tax dollars that are going to waste. And it's absolutely not right. A lot of people are hurting, and the government, the Liberal government, is just wasting these dollars.
Exactly. And we are expecting something. When you are promised to have a new bridge, in your community, maybe your rural community, you need that kind of money. But when you are just promising something and you're not delivering, people on the ground are waiting for something to happen. But they are paying more and more each and every year for absolutely nothing, and that's what is really concerning for us.
And the infrastructure deficit just gets bigger and bigger.
Exactly.
So thank you, Luc Berthold, Member of Parliament for Mégantic-Larabe. Thank you very much. He's the infrastructure critic for Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition. I appreciate his time and his insight. We have the second half of the show coming up. We have Todd Doherty on deck. He's going to talk about some of the issues that we're seeing right across the country in terms of the economy starting to slow down in terms of rail traffic and other methods as well. So thank you, Luc. Stick around for the second half of the show, please. Comment, like, share, subscribe. We need your help to get the Conservative message out and reach Canadians right across this country. Remember, low taxes, less government, more freedom. That's the blueprint.
Right on.
Welcome back to the Blueprint, Canada's Conservative podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Schmale, Member of Parliament for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes Brock. We had a great guest, Luc Berthold, in the first half of the show. In the second half, we are going to talk about an issue that is affecting pretty much every corner of this country, and that's in regards to some of the shutdowns in the economy that's happening, especially when it comes to rail service, and it's all connected to an issue that's happening in a part of the country. The Wet'suwet'en First Nation is having a dispute with some of their hereditary chiefs, and there are protests that are gathering all across the province and the country. But in some cases, these people that are protesting have no connection to these First Nations communities, and they forget that the project in question, the Coastal Gas Link, which is transporting liquefied natural gas to our coast that will export it to China and help reduce their emissions across the ocean, is affecting the prosperity of these First Nations communities. So our critic, Todd Doherty, is here to talk a bit about this. Thank you, Todd. Thank you for joining us. I know this is top of mind for many people. Let's talk about the government's lack of response. It's been 13 days. The Prime Minister was touring around Africa trying to secure a UN Security Council seat and forgetting that there are issues here at home. And I think this has built up over the last few days because of it.
First, can we talk about your voice that you put on when you're on Facebook Live?
This is how I always talk.
Got a very official voice. It's 78 degrees in the big city, and it's going to be a great day. Jamie, you're absolutely right. We have seen an unprecedented crisis that has gone on. There are blockades from coast to coast to coast to coast, as our colleagues would say, in terms of our transportation infrastructure, all in the terms of supporting our Wet'suwet'en. And it is very misguided. Misguided in the terms of the Wet'suwet'en. The majority of the Wet'suwet'en voted in favor of the Coastal Gas Link. Over 85% of the Wet'suwet'en voted in favor of the Coastal Gas Link. And it's a very small group that did not vote in favor of it. And it is that small group that paid activists, essentially foreign activists, have now kind of glommed onto and really taken advantage of this situation. And their sole purpose is to cause anarchy. I call them economic disruptors. We know that the Coastal Gas Link, to this day, right today, has let over $875 million worth of contracts, a majority of those to First Nations and local companies. Over 80% of those that are working on the Coastal GasLink project are from BC. At any given time, there's about, and the numbers change from one day to the next, there's about 400 First Nations people that are working, or Indigenous peoples that are working on Coastal GasLink. You know, when we talk about, and I did a video on my Facebook page earlier last week, and I talked about the frustration. This project is right adjacent my riding of Caribou Prince George, and we have First Nations that have signed on to this. We have non-First Nation communities that have signed on to this project. And why did they do that? It's because there is a limited amount of economic opportunities or opportunities for jobs within Northern British Columbia. And these First Nations leaders, whether they're the elected band councils and chiefs, they voted in favor of economic prosperity. They voted in favor of lifting their communities out of poverty. They voted in favor of saying no to handouts. And then you've got paid activists, many of whom have no...
Well, they don't know what's being transported in that pipeline.
They don't know what's being transported from in the pipeline. They don't even belong in the region. They're not from the region. We had one of the First Nations leaders, Bonnie George, who was at one time employed by the Coastal GasLink. Very powerful message that she said. She goes, "We don't even know who these people are." And the people that from her community that support, the Wet'suwet'en that support Coastal GasLink are being intimidated. Their vehicles and their homes are being vandalized. They're being called traitors by people that aren't even from that community. And I was thinking of a gentleman by the name of, I believe it was Troy Young, whose family have hereditary chiefs on both sides, and whose family's business have contracts with Coastal GasLink. And they've said that, these people that are protesting in support of Wet'suwet'en, you know, they wish that they had both sides of the story, because the real story of this, and this is what I said at the very end of my video on Facebook, was, you know, I stand in support of the Wet'suwet'en that voted in favor of economic prosperity, voted in favor of lifting their community up out of poverty, voted in favor of saying no to handouts and social inequality. It is about lifting their community up. Economic prosperity is for all. And I'll remind people of this, is that reconciliation means charting a path forward for all. And that includes, so reconciliation includes economic reconciliation. And that's the message that is being missed here. You've got these people that are doing everything in their power to disrupt our daily lives, that they know that that they're going to get attention, and the number one way that they're going to get attention is by stopping those north-south or eastbound, east-west trains. Over 900,000 tons of goods are transported by railway every day, and we're a trading nation. And what that means is that our economic prosperity is predicated on our ability to move our goods and our people seamlessly and without disruption. And you think about the disruption that we've had over the last 13 days and what that damage that has caused our shippers, our producers on the world stage. Just-in-time delivery, and we're not able to do that. And then you have our Prime Minister, who's been jet-setting all over the country, doing everything in his power to secure that UN security seat.
Which does nothing.
Which does nothing. When real leadership could have been seen and found by coming home and helping diffuse that situation.
Well, let's not forget, too, there are parts of this country that are warning about shortages. It could be in fuel, food, supplies. This is real, what is happening. And the Prime Minister delayed taking action. Well, he did his own vanity project.
Well, he hasn't taken action. He's taken no action.
Well, yeah, well, that's actually quite obvious. And he says he's going to put together this rapid response team. Well, that rapid response team was probably best used many days ago when this was starting to build up. And the fact that he continues to delay and chart a path forward to give to his ministers and his staff is only compounding this problem.
Not only that, but his inability to act or take action or his absence has now emboldened these groups, so that whether it is the tech project or the TMX project or that next big project that is coming down the pipe, so to speak, we've emboldened these groups that they know that they can shut down our economy, that they know that they can take these steps, and that we have a limp or a weak leader that will not take any action and will just allow it to take place. You know, when you're standing up for rule of law, you're standing up for people's jobs, you're standing up for those people, whether it's the truckers that were involved in the disruption, the blockade at the Port of Vancouver. You're standing up for the CN workers. You're standing up for the farmers whose product can't get to market. Over 80% of our forestry products are shipped by rail. And you're standing up for every Joe and Jane citizen, First Nation and non-First Nation. And this Prime Minister has been completely absent.
Well, every day that the rail strike goes on delays us getting back to normal by 2-3 days.
Yeah.
So once you see these shortages, it'll be a few more days before that actually gets caught up.
100%. And let's also remember this, that just prior to the Christmas break, we had a rail strike in November for a week. And many of these shippers and producers we're just starting to get back to normal. Every day costs CN $18 million to their bottom line. Let's talk about our shippers and our forestry producers right across the board. This is hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of losses, if not in the billions. And our Prime Minister has been AWOL.
So let's pick up on something you mentioned earlier. When you're talking about the process to get major infrastructure completed, such as a pipeline, we're seeing these delays. We're seeing how these activists, in many cases, are shutting down our infrastructure, causing problems for people who are trying to export product that others are waiting for. what does that say to anyone looking at countries or jurisdictions to invest? What does that say when you're making a pitch to your board of directors on precious investment dollars? When you say Canada is on as a potential location, what happens?
Well, we've already, through the policy of the previous Liberal government in the last 4 years that you and I sat through, we've already seen record levels of investment flee our country and move south of the border or to other jurisdictions. Now, all of a sudden, people invest and people do business with Canada because we're a safe place to invest. We are seen as a safe place to do business with. But now, all of a sudden, when you are seeing disruption like this and no action or no reaction to stop this, people can always go to other jurisdictions. It's very easy to do that. We're seeing more and more of our forestry companies already over the last 4 years divest themselves of Canadian operations and invest themselves south of the border because it's easier to do business. It's being seen as a more productive jurisdiction to do business.
And you're not just talking about dollars. After that, the brains start leaving too.
100%. And I do want to say something prior to us signing off, because I don't know what, I'm being cognizant of your time. Bonnie George also mentioned this in her statements, that in the Wet'suwet'en territory, there has been a natural gas pipeline since 1968. They hunt, they fish, they pick their berries. It hasn't damaged any of the fishing. And she said, we have had this and we've lived harmoniously with this pipeline in our region and within our territory ever since. And that the one thing that just kind of, I wish more people would hear this message, is that the First Nations that signed on to this, the 20 First Nations that signed on, the 4 Wet'suwet'en bands and councils and hereditary chiefs included in that signed on to this, it wasn't an overnight process.
This was 5 years plus.
5 years plus. And that if they had questions, the proponent came out, or that they worked together on the grounds, on the lands. They walked the lands as one together. That's true reconciliation. And I think that's something that we should be thinking about as we move forward. And I can't say it enough. When we say we stand with the Wet'suwet'en, I wish, going back to Troy Young's comment, I wish everybody had both sides of the story. Well, that's why you're here, I guess.
Well, that's why we're here. Todd Doherty, Member of Parliament for Caribou, Prince George. Thank you so much for joining the show.
Well, you're very welcome.
Great topic. Appreciate your radio voice. New content every single week, so please like it, share it, comment, subscribe. We need your help in getting out the Conservative message. Together, we can do this and fight the left-wing agenda, which is constantly in motion. We need to push back on this, and we need your help to do it. So again, like, share, subscribe. New content every single week. This is The Blueprint. Remember, low taxes, less government, more freedom. That's The Blueprint.